You won't believe the Bible verse God put in my mind today. This is kind of interesting, actually. I didn't know what he wanted me to see with this one. But it's a good one. Burger King. It's awesome. Okay, let's see here. Get some stuff out of my way. Check it out. I didn't know what he wanted to show me. He doesn't usually have me go look up verses like this, but he just put a verse in my head. Okay, and I went and looked it up, and I was shocked at what it was. Okay, this is 1 Corinthians 3:15. And he put in my head, I think he put in my head, shall suffer loss. And I was thinking, oh yeah, there's a verse that says something about suffering loss of maybe your treasures in heaven or something. And, the person's saved, but everything they did is lost. I just remember some verse like that, and I was like, oh yeah, something like that. And I went and looked up suffer lost. And of course it came to the top. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, look at that. Look what it says. This is crazy. No one reads it directly. All you Bible believing, I take the Bible literally, guys. Why don't you take these verses literally? See what it really says. Okay, here we go. According to the grace of God, I'm going to start at verse 10 and read through, I think it's verse 17. Let's go through this, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. Just take this literally, people. Just literally believe what this says. And you're going to see that it's not what the church teaches often. It's not something that the church teaches. But if you take it literally, it's something I teach. A lot of the church won't teach us. Verse 10, according to the grace of God which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. For other foundation can no man lay than that was laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest. For the day shall declare it, because it is revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. So this is talking about every man. Every man. It's talking about there's a foundation, and people will build on this foundation, whatever, And it's talking about every man's work. Every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. We're talking every man, okay? If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yes, so as by fire. Okay, I've heard a lot of Calvinists use this verse incorrectly. This is their excuse for all these people that don't live right. They're not living for God. They're out getting drunk every night, saying F you to God and the world, and not giving any care whatsoever about God's things of God, or about doing God's will or anything. Basically, they're not Christian. But these Calvinists will call them Christians because they said the sinner's prayer 20 years ago, and it was real. So obviously they're still saved, even though they're not living right at all. And obviously don't even believe anymore. Now they're atheists or whatever, and then they still say they're saved, It's like retarded. But some Calvinists will actually say this. And then they'll say, well, they'll lose every work because they built on Jesus Christ, the foundation. They built wood, hay, stubble, and it was all burned away, but then they'll be saved. They'll still be saved. And I'm thinking to myself, no, they won't be saved. They'll be going to hell. You know what I mean? But here's another way to look at this verse, because it's starting to make more sense to me. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. What does that mean? First, it was talking about every man in verse 13. Okay, and it's still continuing on from verse 13. It says every man. So we're talking everybody. Jeffrey Dahmer, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Pol Pot, all the crazy ass people. We're talking Kim Jong-il, who died not too long ago. So these people lost everything. They suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so by fire. So what does that mean by fire? By hellfire. They'll be saved by hellfire. See, I hadn't thought of it looking at this verse this way. Well, how else are they going to be saved by fire? Okay, think about it. Okay, if they're really a Christian and they were just what do you call it? A carnal Christian, as they say. Let's just say they were a real Christian. Somehow they were miraculously a real Christian, but had literally no fruit, which totally contradicts what Jesus said, because Jesus said a good tree produces good fruit, an evil tree produces evil fruit. But let's just say somehow there's a Christian and he has no good works, and somehow all those were burned, and all that's left is him. It says right here that he'd be saved so as by fire. Well, that doesn't make sense, because if Jesus saved him, he's already cleansed and clean, so he doesn't need to be saved by fire. See what I'm getting at now? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Of course, it would go through a fire, but here it says by fire they're saved. By fire. You understand now? If you're a Christian, you're not saved by fire. You're saved by believing in Jesus and being committed to him, not by going through a fire to get to him. Now, you might be in a sense tested by being in God's presence, but that's not being saved by fire. That's being just tested, or whatever you want to call it. But being saved by fire sounds to me like you're going through something that's fiery, a fiery trial or something. It would say to me that it is referring to people in hell. That if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. See what I mean? Fires of hell. So how many people have interpreted it this way? I don't know. But it makes sense to me. I'm not the one that put the verse in my head earlier. Okay? I didn't even hardly recall what the verse was. It was stuck in my head. I went and looked it up, and ding, there's the interpretation. It just kind of shot off the page to me. Okay, I was looking at other translations here. The World English Bible, which is a free Bible some guy created so you could just stick it online without people charging royalties for Bibles, because you have the NIV Bible, which you have to pay, I think it's like $7 per copy. So like if you have an NIV Bible on some software, it costs them like $7 to $10 to have it on their software. They have to pay that much to Zondervan. But whatever, it's a free Bible, okay? World English Bible was made not too long ago. I think it was in the 90s or 2000s or whatever. It says here, if any man's work is burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, but as through fire. Through fire. Okay? And I was like, this is really interesting, because God is a consuming fire. So, and the Orthodox say that when you're a non-believer and a believer, you're both in the same presence of God, and that presence is a fire. Okay? So here we go. I'm looking at some related early church father stuff here. Here we go. What is this? This is chapter 13 of something. What is this? Ante-Nicene Fathers, Volume 4, Chapter 13. Okay. Who's talking here? I don't even know who's talking. Let me go figure it out. Oh, this is really interesting. I guess this is a Bible study with God here. God giving me this verse, and look where it goes. It's Origen. So it's a writing of Origen. It's a volume 4 of the early church Ante-Nicene Fathers volumes. Origen against verse Celsus. I think his name's Celsus. Okay, let's just read what he says here. But as in a mockery, that Celsus says we speak of God coming down like a torturer bearing fire, and thus compels us unseasonably to investigate the word's deeper meaning, we shall make a few remarks sufficient to enable our hearers to form an idea. Okay, of the defense which disposes of the ridicule of Celsus against us. Then we shall turn to what follows. The divine word says that our God is a consuming fire. Deuteronomy, 4:24 and 9:3. That he draws rivers of fire before him. Daniel 7:10. Nay, that he even entereth in as a refiner's fire and as a fuller's herb. Malachi 3:2. To purify his own people, that when he is said to be a consuming fire, we inquire what are the things which are appropriate to be consumed by God, and we assert that they are wickedness, and the works which result from it, which being figuratively called wood and hay and stubble. 1 Corinthians 3:12, which is what I was reading before. God consumes as a fire. The wicked man accordingly is said to build up on the previously laid foundation of reason, wood, hay, and stubble. If then anyone can show that these words were differently understood by the writer and can prove that the wicked man literally builds up wood or hay or stubble, it is evident that the fire must be understood to be material and not an object of sense. But if, on the contrary, the works of the wicked man are spoken of figuratively under the names wood or hay or stubble, why does it not at once occur to inquire in what sense the word fire is to be taken, so that wood of such kind should be consumed? For Scripture says, the fire will try each man's work, of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work be burned, he shall suffer loss. 1 Corinthians 13 through 15. 1 Corinthians 3, 13 through 15. But what work can be spoken of in these words as being burned, save all the results from wickedness? Therefore our God is a consuming fire in the sense which we hath taken the word. Thus he enters in as a refiner's fire, to refine the rational nature, which has been filled with the lead of wickedness, and to free it from the other impure materials which adulterate the natural gold or silver, so to speak, of the soul. And in like manner rivers of fire are said to be before God, who has thoroughly cleansed away the evil which is intermingled throughout the whole soul. But these remarks are sufficient in answer to the assertion that thus they were made to give an expression to the erroneous opinion that God will come down bearing fire like a torturer. So here, this is Origen's words. You can see what he said makes a lot of sense, actually. And, you know, it's kind of interesting God put this verse in my head, because it says they're saved through fire. Hellfire. They're saved through hellfire, which is what I've been preaching. And here's a verse that clearly says that. 1 Corinthians 3:15. So, Calvinists, it's not about some hypocritical Christian somehow managing to escape the wrath of God to get into heaven. No, because apparently they're not going to get to heaven. They're going to have to go through by fire to get to heaven, which would be hellfire, because a good tree produces good fruit, an evil tree produces evil fruit, and a good tree can't produce evil fruit, and an evil tree cannot produce good fruit. And you know them by their works. Do men gather grapes among thistles, or what was it, figs among thistles? No, they don't. So, what does that mean? That means if you don't have any fruit, you're not of God. If you don't hear God's voice, you're not a sheep. It says, my sheep hear my voice. It's real simple logic. This is Jesus' words, and people have adulterated Paul's words, but here we have Paul making sense if you interpret it correctly. It's not talking about hypocritical Christians getting to heaven, backslidden ones getting to heaven. It's talking about everybody. Every man will be saved through fire if their works are all bad. If your works are all bad, you're going to lose all your works. They're going to burn up, wood, hay, and stubble. But your soul will be saved through fire. You'll be refined and made whole and be able to live in heaven. And how does God do it? Through love. And so this is figurative. This is what Origen was trying to make clear, was that it was figurative. It wasn't literal fire burning your soul. Okay? That's kind of the point, you know, because the torturing ones, the ones that believe in eternal torture, teach physical torture, which comes from the Manichaean Gnosticism, which I've talked about many times. But anyway, I thought it was really cool, this verse. And that's our Bible study for today. Big whopping 15 minutes.